Welcome back to the session. So before we went to the break, we are discussing about your Hibernate concept, and we have discussed about the different what is exactly mean by Hibernate and why the ORM tools are being used. What is the disadvantages of manually using the JDBC, and why we should go for the ORM tools that we have seen. Now, we'll see some of the features, which are supported by your Hibernate, and accordingly, we'll see that, how Hibernate it is going, how we can work with your Hibernate, that we are going to discuss also. Let us see that. So Hibernate is one of the ORM tool that is popular among the developers because of this, some of the features which we see. This will bridge the gap between the object-oriented programming concept to the relational database paradigm, and it will support the object-oriented principle, and it provides the developer with a simple and persistent, how the data to be persistent, that it has been provided. Database independent, any database also it can be supported by Hibernate. It is not specific to any particular database. So whatever the database you want to connect, you can connect to the database. And the best part is that it has provided Hibernate query language. This Hibernate query language, what it will do is, this will gives us the feasibility for querying the database and returning the collection objects. So that is what the one of the advantage of your Hibernate query language, and it will support the query cache and provides the statistics about the query and the database status also. It will be there. So query cache, it will contain the database status, whether connection live or what is the database metadata information and all. It will be containing with the query cache. And different ID like NetBeans, Eclipse also will support the Hibernate framework also. So if you want to use the Hibernate framework, even NetBeans also supported, even it will support, Eclipse also will support, so that you can add the feature of Hibernate to your web application also. And we have XML files for mapping the information and all. We use the simple Hibernate can also be used for the mapping between the table with your column values. How this has to be mapped through your XML file. We can map that. If you remember, so here we'll use some of the mapping files like Hibernate mapping files which are there that we can use, and config file will be there basically, which will be for configuration of the database and all, which we can do. So that are all the different type of your XML files which you need to use for doing the mapping and connection setting configurations and all that we can do with your XML based files also. So these are all the some of the features which are being supported by Hibernate. All right. Any other part? Any questions? All right then. Now we'll see the differences between an Hibernate to the EJB JPA. So how it is being implemented, that we are going to discuss. However, see, it doesn't mean that the Hibernate is EJB, or do not compare that whole EJB into an Hibernate or anything. Actually, EJB, if you see, it is basically used as a implementing the business logic and all. One of that EJB part is JPA, which is how it is also an ORM tool. How that it has to be compared, that you can see. Hibernate is a open source technology, whereas EJB is a part of your Java use specification, that we know, but the Hibernate is a totally open source technology, and it can be used with different databases also. Then in case of your EJB, it is difficult to switch from one database to another, but whereas in the case of your Hibernate, which is providing the transparent data persistence, so we can change the XML file and we can move to some other database also. So that is very easily we can transfer, or we can make our application to be compatible with any kind of your databases also. But whereas in the case of your EJB based JPA, which is there, it is difficult for you to switch between one database to the another database also. Hibernate is not dependent on a framework or a runtime environment, but however, data persistence of EJB is depends on the EJB container. So compulsory we require the EJB container to store to implement these database features and all. But however, in the case of your Hibernate, we can just implement even Tomcat also. Still, it will work. So that doesn't require any kind of your EJB container kind of things. Which will not require. So, but however, for Hibernate, we do not require a kind of your specific data servers and all. Connectivity code we need to change. That is only the XML values only we have to change. There is no problem. If I want to go for there is a Hibernate configuration file will be there. So that configuration file, if you change the whole database coding and everything can be also changed. So that is not possible in the case of your JPA based implementation. Hibernate is providing the persistent services with its own classes and interfaces and methods which are being provided. Whereas EJB is providing the data persistence with the JPA, that is Java Persistence API. Yes, for Hibernate, transparent data persistence in the sense if you want to switch between one database to another database, it is very easy to switch between them. That is why we talk about transparent data persistence. That means it will be easy. In the only the configuration file we can change the some of the few information automatically that it can be switched to the different databases also, which is not possible in the case of your EJB based JPA. Then HQL is a Hibernate query language which has been used for implementing Hibernate managed object relational database, whereas EJB has provided JPA based queries, that is called your JPQL is the query language which we need to use. We cannot have multiple configuration files which we cannot have. One configuration file which is more than enough for us. EJB will provide you the JPQL, that is Java Persistent Query Language is provided to you for storing for querying the database and retrieve the data as a collection. The classes are used in the Hibernate as a plain old Java object POJO that can be any Java class, but whereas however when you are using the data persistence in EJB, it should be an entity based class. So it should be an annotation with an entity. Then only that particular class will act, or we can store as a database your object or a row. So that is what we can know. So these are some of the differentiations which we can find between the Hibernate and we can talk about the JPA of EJB. These are some of the differentiations. So you can just remember the few points about the differentiation between an Hibernate to JPA also. All right. Fine. All right then. So next we'll be moving down to the next part, about your Hibernate framework and how we can implement that we are going to discuss also. Now whether it is any kind of loading feature, we'll see next, Arun. Now to enable the application to communicate with the database, how the Hibernate framework, let us will see. We need to implement the logic like connect with the database, retrieve the data from the database, store the data into the database, and perform some conversion of the Java class into database specific data types. So this is all what we do generally in the Hibernate to communicate with your Java application with your database also. These are all the few things which we do. Connect with the database, retrieve the data from the database, store the data from the database, and perform some conversion. So that is conversion also we need to do, because the data types of your database and data types of your object-oriented programming, it will be different. So hence we require some kind of your conversions which is required for you. So Hibernate framework, which requires the communication between a database application to the data persistence in a separate configuration file, and it will provide its own types also. Okay, Hibernate is having its own type to store the data into the database, and Hibernate is a collection of various components, okay, that is communicate with the database. The existing Java API, okay, to communicate with the database, uses the existing Java API for communicating with the database. That means the JDBC API, okay, which will be used, okay, internally it will use the JDBC API to store the data into the database only. Now when you when you are implementing this JPA, the Hibernate, these are some of the few, okay, the architecture which you can see in your Hibernate based applications also. So your application, okay, that is, you think that, okay, this is your application which you have created. The application might be in JSP, might be in Jsfs, okay, the application which you have created, the web application, or the application maybe in a string, okay, you have developed that. Now this application has to use your Hibernate based application which you want to use. So that is how we are going to do. Okay, so you can see that, okay, your application, it is there, and okay, you can see that, okay, there is an few things called as, okay, this layer. If you see that, okay, JTA, Java Transaction API, JDBC, Java Database Connectivity, and the Java Naming, okay, Directory Interface. So this is the, if you see this particular layer, Hibernate, okay, sits on these particular layers, that is JTA, JDBC, and JNDI. On this particular layer, this will be sitting on. That means Hibernate, it is going to use the JDBC, it is going to use the Java Transactions APIs also to maintain the concurrency and all, and okay, to implement the remote connectivity purpose also, we need to use the JNDI, Java Naming Directory Interface, and which is going to use the context and initial context class by which, okay, we can implement or we can retrieve the data from the remote location, the data, if you want a remote object, if you want to communicate, then we can go for your JNDI also. Similarly, if we want to implement, whenever we want to do any kind of your Java based database transactions when we are doing, so obviously we require some kind of your transactions. So to implement the transactions, we require internally, okay, the JTA, that is Java Transaction API, which you are using, and obviously we need to use JDBC, as I told you that. Even okay, we are using the Hibernate, but still Hibernate internally will use, okay, the JDBC implementation only, and it will use the classes and interfaces, whatever it is provided in the JDBC. The same, okay, thing internally it is going to use, and it is going to implement. Obviously, then the database layer will come where the data, it will be stored or retrieved. That is, okay, depending on the type of your application, whatever the program you have written. So based on that, okay, the execution, it is going to happen. Any questions? I want everyone to respond quickly. I want everyone to respond. I have not talked about the still the Hibernate, okay, layer. We are just talking about apart from the Hibernate, that is above the Hibernate layer, below the Hibernate layer we are talking about.
Hello, sir.
Okay, fine. Fine, Shivani. Please tell.
Yeah. So what is JTA exactly? Can you explain again?
JTA is Java Transaction API. By using this particular API, we can maintain the transactions. So if you remember, okay, we have something called as transaction. Even we are implementing in your Oracle or maybe in SQL Server also, we implement the transactions, right? To implement Sjfs properties, atomicity, consistency, okay, then durability and isolation. Okay, so these are the properties. To implement this one, we go for the transactions, right? So to implement that, okay, in the database, we go for the transactions. So even in case of your Hibernate also, what we are trying to do, we are trying to do the transactions. Maybe we are inserting the data, maybe we are deleting the data or retrieving the data. These are all the few functionalities which you are going to do, okay, with using your Hibernate. So obviously when you are doing this particular transaction, okay, so certainly we require some kind of your transactions functionality which need to be added. Even if you see in case of your JDBC also, we implement transaction there also. Okay, how we are doing there? By using the connection cron dot set auto commit false. Okay, connection object dot set auto commit false we are specifying. Then we are using the con dot commit or con dot rollback are the functions we are using for implementing the transaction. Similar fashion here also in Hibernate, if you want to implement the transaction, because here also we are going to do the similar kind of your activity. Okay, maybe you are inserting or maybe we are doing the managing of all this data. So we require the transaction. So to implement that, we require the JPA. So JTA is already been provided by Java, so that API. So your Hibernate, so it is not using any new APIs and all. We will use the existing API, that is JTA, and then it will implement the transaction section. That is the basic objective why JTA is used. Am I clear?
And that automatically means we do so automatically it will be happy. So neat.
No, this is you can see there is a transaction transaction interface which is there in Hibernate. You see one of the objects that is transactions, so which will internally use the JPA. So when you are using the Hibernate, we'll use transaction object, where we'll write the code. Within that limit only we can write the code to implement the transaction. So that will use internally the JPA.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
We say Hibernate is a framework just like Jsfs. Yes, yes. Okay, it is also a framework which is consisting of your classes and interfaces. Now we have any other questions apart from this? Any other questions apart from this? I have not talked about till now the Hibernate. Okay, Hibernate layer now we are going to discuss. Other layers have you understood now? Next we can move to the Hibernate layer. Any questions? I told Arun that okay, still we are not coming to the Hibernate layer. And now I am coming to that. Right. Fine. Now we'll move to the next part. Okay, that is nothing but your Hibernate layer. Now in the Hibernate layer, what we are trying to do is, in your Hibernate layer, what are the things are there? These are the 6 different objects which you are going to use. These are the built-in objects which are being provided for you. Okay, we can use these particular objects for doing different functionality. Configuration. Okay, so overall, giving the brief idea. Okay, then we'll come back to each and every individual. We'll go for the fully explanation, but now I'm giving the small explanation about each and every component. Now we'll see that okay, coding wise and everything how it is going to use. Configuration is nothing but okay, this is will be used. It is going to interact with your Hibernate configuration file, actual Hibernate configuration file, and get a configuration object. But actually it is pointing to where Hibernate configuration file it is going to point. This Hibernate configuration file, what it will contain? It will contain how to connect to the database. So to represent that Hibernate, the connection, so this configuration will contain that information. So it will point to that particular Hibernate configuration file. So based on the Hibernate configuration file, a configuration object will be created. This configuration object will contain the information on how to connect to the database and all. Am I clear to you? Now the first object. Yes. Everyone, can you please respond?
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, please repeat the persistence object. That means that it's a simple class object. The entity class object, that means it's known as a persistence object.
Yes.
Okay, it will connect with the our application as well as the Hibernate framework. Then it will communicate with the database.
This is the class okay which is going to store okay whose object it is going to store into the database. Persistent object is this particular object which is going to store into the database. That is a simple.
That is a persistence object.
Yes.
So, if there is any life cycle of this persistence object?
No, there is a simple one. Okay, it is just like any other object. This is also an object whose value.
The garbage collector will create the finalize method call, and it will be finalize or garbage out of the memory.
Everything as normal object how we are considering. The same way you have to consider this persistent object. It is nothing to do with.
Okay, suppose in reverse order, if we are fetching the data from the database, so it will store in the persistent object, then the connection will destroy.
First connection will be created, and this is what we do the query. Okay, we'll go for the query. When you reverse order, you are saying that means from the database we are retrieving the data and we want to create an object. That is what you mean, right?
Yeah. Then after the value is storing in the object, that at the time the connection will close.
It depends
after retrieving.
See, after retrieving that, okay, we cannot say no that okay whether if that connection object is no more used, in that case okay, it will close. But if I am using in somewhere else, then it will continue. I may create let's say 10 objects I am creating a loop. In that case, first object has been created. For the second object, third object, maybe after that another class object also I am creating. So I cannot say that that connection object will close immediately when my object is being finished. So the connection wherever I use. Yes.
We have to use some commit and something methods to execute that queries. To execute that query. Yes,
we will have the methods. So that methods will be there. That is what we will see. This all the objects are there. So that methods only we are going.
So we can see that methods using the JavaP command.
Methods you want to say?
If I want to see that signature using the JavaP command, so can I do that?
Yes, we can see this particular classes. I will tell you that which particular classes. So if you remember JPA, do you remember in the WCD?
Yeah.
Okay, how you do?
JPA, yes.
How you do?
The entity classes.
We create entity class. Then what we do? We create an entity manager object. Right? We create a user transaction object. We create a user transaction object. Okay? How you are thinking equal to, please think in Hibernate also. Only thing that there are some certain changes which are there, that classes only we have to know. Other than that, the same way we are going to do here also. If you can compare that, then easily we can get it also here. Yeah. Any other question?
One more thing, somewhere I see that there is something in the ORM, there's a lazy loading and eager loading, something, there's a concept I think.
I just want to tell this particular answer afterwards, because I told that the same thing. I just want to give the check, because still I am not clear with that particular question. So if you can write that particular question to me, then I can get back to you. Okay? Right?
Definitely I'll write it. Okay.
Alright, so now coming back to this, see, persistent object is the object which is going to be stored. It can be an employee object, it can be a student object, it can be an any other class object whose values has to be stored into the database. That is your persistent object. Okay, then we have configuration. Configuration is nothing but an object which will contain the information for the connectivity. So this will point to the actual Hibernate configuration file. There will be a Hibernate configuration file which will be created for you whenever you are creating the project. That time only, when you will specify the database, which database you want to connect, that time automatically the Hibernate configuration file will be created for you. If you want, you can create manually also afterwards, but however, if you want to create previously, you can do that. So that file, it will be pointed, configuration. Session factory, it is basically these all the operation will be happen in a session. Maybe whatever the database operation you want to do. You want to insert the data, you want to delete the data, you want to update the data. Anything you want to do, then you need to have a session. Within the session only it has to be executed. So to create that particular session, we require the session factory object. Sorry. and session factory object is based on the configuration only. And next, from the session factory, we can get the session object, and in this session object only the persistence will happen, because within the session object only we'll have the methods by which we can store the data, we can retrieve, we can update, all these things which we can do through this particular session. And transaction, it is basically to implement the transaction, that is so that the exit property can be implemented. So that's why we use the transactions. In our Hibernate application we can implement the transaction. Then query is nothing but again this is an object by which we can create a HQL, that is Hibernate query language we can create, and based on that we can retrieve the data from the database and we can create the collections of values, and then we can display that particular value. So that is purpose we can use the query. And the last one is the criteria. If you want to give any kind of your conditional based queries, through the query, if you want to give any kind of your conditional based queries, in that case we can go for the criteria also. So these are all the few things which you can be implemented for your Hibernate. Using the Hibernate we can do these all the things. So you can see that these are all the some of the 6 different things which we have discussed. So configuration is a class, session factory is an interface, session is an interface, transaction is an interface, query is an interface, criteria is also an interface, and all these particular classes and interfaces are available in your Hibernate API. So these are the built-in classes which are being provided to implement the ORM implementation, and storing the data into the database. That is the purpose what we are doing. Now see, in this, the diagram which will show you. So configuration file, what the configuration file will contain? Configuration file will contain the information related to the, that is, which is part of your Hibernate configuration file it will be containing. Then, the session factory will, the object will be created based on your configuration. Based on the session factory, we will create the session object, and based on the session object, we can store the object into the database. And when you are storing the data into the database, we implement the transactions also. So these are the few points which you need to know. It's a third party only. Yes, it is a third party only. Arun. All right. So configuration, session factory, then session, then we have the database. And this is what your transactions, because when you are storing the data into the database, the implementation, that time we keep these all transactional based codes within a transaction, so that it will implement the transaction itself. And here it has not given the query on the criteria, because query and criteria are basically for retrieving the data from the database. That time we can use this query and criteria. Is this diagram is have you understood? If you have any questions in this diagram, you can ask. This is if you have understood, then we can understand your Hibernate. No, session factory where we can have multiple sessions. From that, one of the session object we can create and we can do. Session factory is a multiple session object. It is just, you can think about that. Like how we have bean factory, from that, we create one of the bean. Like that, session factory is the number of session objects, where one of the session object we can use and we can send or any kind of a transaction which we can be implemented on that particular session object. I want everyone to respond. Can you please respond, acknowledge whether this diagram have you understood, or any questions? They have not acknowledged still. Session factory we can get through the object by using the configuration. Yes. Any other questions? All right then. Now see, the next one, it is nothing but, as I told you that, okay, we have something, the file called as Hibernate configuration file. So this is the Hibernate configuration file where the database connectivity code, username, password, every information which will be stored in this Hibernate configuration file. So the name of that Hibernate configuration file, it will be Hibernate cfg.xml file. That means Hibernate configuration file it is. And this is a file, okay, which will be pointed by the configuration file, and we will create the configuration object. And remember that, okay, this is what it will contain, like Hibernate configuration session factory, and you'll give the property like connection.username, then we have connection.password, the driver name, every information which we can be given in the Hibernate configuration file itself. And some of the properties which will be there in your Hibernate configuration file, like driver name, URL, username, and password. This is the same thing which you are giving in a JDBC code when you are writing class.forName, then you are passing the driver class, your driver class name which you are specifying, then you are giving the the driver manager.getConnection, then you are specifying the URL, username, and password. Similarly, how you are passing there manually the code, here also, these all information which will be the part of your Hibernate configuration file. So that we need to remember. Yes, we can do that. That is also we can do. Whatever you want to select, you can select that. So then we'll have, okay, the configuration file also will contain, okay, certain dialects, Hibernate.dialect, which will be containing some SQL, okay, which is also will be containing, and other miscellaneous properties also which will be contained by your, okay, this configuration files also. This is all about your, okay, simple configuration file, what it will be containing, and this configuration object which will be used, okay, using this particular configuration object only. Automatically, there are two ways. When you are creating the project, in the NetBeans, when you will select Hibernate, then automatically it will ask you that, okay, whether which database you want to use and which particular table and all. Okay, it will specify. Then automatically this Hibernate configuration file will be created for you. But however, if you have created an application, but later on you have been added the Hibernate, okay, implementation, in that case you need to create your own Hibernate configuration file and you have to implement it. Alright?
But in that automatic username password also automatically it will take?
No, you will give, no, whenever you are creating the project, that time you will give no username and password.
Oh,
that username password will be the part of that, okay, configuration. You have to give the configuration when you are creating the project itself. Okay?
Okay, yeah. Okay.
I do not have Eclipse, we have not done, okay, we have in the NetBeans only. Then the next part, okay, which we are coming, okay, that is session factory. So a session object in an application is created by using session factory object. To create a session factory object, the application needs various data specific information like database driver name, user name, okay, then password used to connect to the database. For all this, okay, we go for the session factory object if we want to create. And all this information where you can get through the configuration you can get, because already the configuration object will contain that particular information also. So the information stored in this file used to go for the session factory. Now you'll see that a syntax to create the session factory object. Let us will see that. You can see that, okay, session factory object, how to create. So see, session factory object is equal to new of annotation configuration dot configure, then build session factory. This is way how you can create a session factory object. This automatic configuration object dot configure method will return a configuration object, and build session factory is the method of the configuration by which the session factory object which we can pass. You can use that code, okay, or else you can use also this code. Let me show you this. It's a class, okay, it's a constructor which we are creating, annotation configuration. We are calling it is a class. You can also do this is we can do, or else we can write this particular code also. You can see this, okay, this is the code also which we can write for creating the session factory object. Okay, so this is the configuration object which we can create here. So this is way how I can create the configuration object, you can see. Then we have, okay, configuration file which we can have. Okay, this is configuring configuration file. To the configuration object. Okay, so this is what we are doing. Okay, so that's the point. Okay, this is what we can implement, and then okay, we can create the session factory object. This is my session factory object which will be gets created here. First we will create the session configuration object, then we are going to configure, okay, configuring the configuration file by using simple, okay, CFG configuration object dot configure method, and in that, okay, you have to pass that, okay, hibernate dot cfg dot xml file which we can pass, by which, okay, we can configure also. Then the configuration file dot build session factory is the method you need to call, by which we can get the session factory object also. This is what we can do. All right. Yes, session factory object, it is, okay, based on the your configuration object only. Without that, okay, it cannot be possible. So we require the configuration file. So based on the configuration file, configuration object will be created. Based on the configuration object, okay, your session factory object will be created. And depending on that, okay, you may create, okay, one particular database. Okay, if you want to connect, then we require one session factory object. If you want to have multiple session, okay, multiple databases to be connected, in that case we can create multiple session factory objects also. That is can be created. The session factory object must be instantiated once during the application initialization also. If you want to have multiple, okay, databases connection, then we can create multiple session factory objects also. Alright, so this is all about your session factory, okay, how we can create that we have seen. But however, in your book it has given annotation configuration. So this is, instead of configuration class, he has used the annotation configuration. So he has said new of annotation configuration dot configure. Okay, this can also be written like this, right? These two code can also be written like this also, right? New configuration dot configure. Then you can find, okay, you can give the file name here, xyz, whatever. Then okay, dot, you can write also dot build session factory. You can write that way also. So this is one line, he has written that, okay, in your book. Only thing that, okay, instead of configuration, okay, he has used the annotation configuration, okay, file he has used. Other than that, nothing. So this is way how you can do. Okay, is it clear now? These 3 lines can also be written like this, right? Okay. New of configuration dot configure, then we can pass like a hibernate hyphen dot XML file dot, okay, build session factory. Okay, so this is what he has created. Session factory is equal to, he has created like this. So this is way also we can do. There is no problem. Either you write it like this or you can write like this also. Fine. So in a single line also you can write, or else I have written in 3 lines, okay, just to make you understand. Why anyone is better, there is no problem. If you understand, then you can write in a single line, there is no problem. Yes, we can use. We are using now, no problem. Alright then, this is all about, okay, how we are implementing about your session factory object, how to implement that we have been seeing. Alright. Fine. So we can write like this also. Okay, there are the 2 ways which I can write also. So just other than that, okay, that code is not having any other thing. And next, okay, once we have created the session factory object, we can create the session object. Once we get the session object, okay, then we can, okay, call the methods for storing the objects and all. Now, to get the session object, okay, to get the session object, then we can also go for the session method, okay, which we can call, and we can get the session object also. Now, okay, this all the things once we have been implemented, you need to create also, there is something called as hibernate mapping file. This is once the session factory object has been created, then you will create a session object. After creating the session object, then next thing is what? The database, whichever you have created, the class file which you have created, their column name to this particular class property need to be matched, right? So you need to have the configured mapping properties. So this is very, very important part, okay, that is mapping properties we have to do. Like employee class is there. Employee class have employee ID, employee name, and say address. In database also we have employee ID, say employee name and address. Now we have to match, know which column to which particular column it has to be, or which ID or property it has to be stored in which column, that we need to map. That will be comes under the mapping properties. So when you are doing the mapping properties, we need to create a class called as persistent class.hdm.xml file. This is your Hibernate mapping file, what we will say. Now if I am creating an employee class, and then obviously my name of that, okay, Hibernate mapping file will be employee.hdm.xml file. If I have created a salary and I want to store that data also, in that case it will be salary.hdm.xml, student.hdm.xml, customer.hdm.xml, account.hdm.xml. So that, okay, this particular XML file will contain the information about which particular properties of this class, which column it is mapping to the database column, that we need to be specified here. That is what the mapping it will do. Any questions here? If you have any doubts, you can ask. I want everyone to respond. What?
File that means it will map from the particular attribute or it will map with the particular reference.
Particular
Reference, or it will bind with the particular object or particular attribute.
Yes. It will be binded with your particular attribute with the column name. Now I can show you this. Now I am creating a simple employee.hbm.xml file. You can see that XML file now. Yes. You're able to see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Now in this, are you able to see this particular file which I have opened, Notepad?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Fine. This particular file I have created for employee class. My employee class is this one. What is that? It is the employee ID, salary, and then employee name. 3 attributes are there. Getter methods and setter methods I have written. Now I want to write a hbm.xml file. Now I am writing that. What is this? Class name com.employee. Table name is what? Employee. Alright. Now which one is the ID property? Employee ID. Column name is what? Employee ID.
Yeah,
Okay. Then yes. Then property name, employee name. Column name, employee name. Again the property name is salary. Column name is salary. Like that, we need to specify the mapping file, and this mapping file will be stored in the entity file, that is persistent file called as employee.hbm.xml file.
We have to create the employee.hbm.xml file.
Yes.
So otherwise we need to create. Otherwise we can create the annotations. Use the annotations, so we don't need to create the employee.hbm.xml file.
Yes, proper annotation if you will give, then also it will work. If you are creating, when we are creating the annotated files. Okay, annotated
so
files.
At that time, if we are using the annotations, so that means we don't have to use the employee.hbm.xml.
Annotation doesn't require, but in Hibernate, we implement as part of this, we implement the configuration file. Check out with whether we can do with your annotation or not, because we are like JPA how you do, whether it is supported properly in the Hibernate. Okay.
It's the same, so that means we can create.
We can do that.
Create.
Yes, actually we can do that.
Because annotations comes for the reducing the XML coding.
Correct. Okay, so which can be avoided, but check that one. Okay, so because most of in our thing, it has been given through the HBM only. Nowhere it has been started with annotation. Okay.
Manual coding.
Manual coding only. Okay.
Okay.
So this employee.hbm.xml file which is there, where we need to write the code totally. Which particular class file, how we need to write, that we need to see. Okay, so this is the coding how we need to do. Okay, in this employee.hbm.xml file. But automatically, as you know that NetBeans will write this particular code. Some part it will write. When you are creating the hbm.xml file, if already that table is existing, then you can specify that particular table name. It will create that XML file. But if any more changes are there, then you can do that.
We connect our data. We'll connect our Hibernate file with the Derby Derby or the external database.
Any kind of database, no. It doesn't matter that Derby only. But however, in the practical, I will show you Derby. But it is not mandatory that we have to go for Derby only. We can go for Oracle. We can go for any particular databases. Okay, so because that hbm.configuration file, it will create that information through which database it needs to be connected.
We have to add the drivers and store that.
Yes. Accordingly, we have to do. Okay. Persistent class, because the class object it is going to store into the database, right? Oh, Ramu. Yes. Please speak, Ramu. Yes. No, this particular class will be called as a persistent class because it is going to store into the database, right? Which is persisting directly for a permanent. So that's why it is called a persistent class. Okay?
Fine.
Is Mallikarjun also there with you? Both of you are attending?
Yeah, yes. It's both are attending.
Fine. Are you there? Both of you are in the group, which the group I have created.
Yes, sir. We are in the group. Both are in the group.
Thank you. The property data type in employee. It will give an error for us. Okay, if the property is not matching extra. Let me check. Okay, from Janagar. Fine, Ramu. So that is the part, okay, which you need to create this particular Hibernate configuration file, which you need to be taken care. And so the Hibernate mapping file which you need to create, and this is the Hibernate mapping file which I told. Okay, now this Hibernate, once you have created this Hibernate mapping file, then we can write a simple JSP code also we can write, and we can store the data into the database. That is very easy. Not get your question actually. Can you tell me now?
Hello.
Yes, Pallavi.
Can we, for each class object that we are having, there will be a different XML file will be created, as you told.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. Yes, we need to create.
So I wanted to ask that if I want to process data from 2-3 different classes objects, means 2 fields from object, 2 fields from a different class, this way. So will it be possible? How it will be possible?
That is what you are saying is nothing but something called as inheritance or a composition kind of things which you are going to be implemented. That means that is only separately. If you want to combine, means what you want to, maybe you want to go for an inheritance based. Okay, that's how we can store the data into the database. Or maybe a composition based class is there. Now how we want to store that also we can do. That is also very possible. Which is the next part. Yes. If it is, now we are discussing the simple class, one class. Okay, how it will be stored. Next we are going to see that how we can implement join based implementation or a composition based implementation if it is there, how we can do. There is some certain part called as union, it is there. Okay, so all that are there. Okay?
Okay. Yes.
Fine. Alright then. So this is the part, okay, which we are talking about the Hibernate configuration file and all about, okay, and what we have been discussed. And then we can write the code. Okay, so this is what we can write the code. We have created a configuration file. We have created a session object. So factory.openSession method by which session object. We can create the transaction object by calling the session1.begin transaction. On session object, okay, begin transaction method for all the transaction objects. Then session1.save is the method by which, okay, we can save the persistent, okay, class object we can store. We can create the class object, we can set the values, then we can store also. And then we can give the, okay, commit is the one, okay, method by which we can commit the transaction. We can close the session, we can close the factory also. So by that, okay, we can simply write the code for doing this. So all these things we can write in the JSP, or even if you want to implement through the JSF also can be done that. Yes.
Method session1.save object, which object we have created.
Correct.
Okay, so where it will save? It will save inside the database, or it will save temporarily in the sessions object?
No. Directly it will be saved into the database only. It is not, okay, going to store.
So what's the use of commit?
No, until you say commit. But that means, okay, you mean to say that, okay, database wise, transaction wise you are talking about.
But we are not doing suppose any transaction work, but each and every time we have to use, I think that commit, if we are going for the.
So as you know that we implement this commit and rollback. Why we do? When we go for multiple transactions, okay, maybe that any one of the element or any one of the transaction will be failed. It may create an inconsistency in your database. Then okay, we go for your transaction. Right, and obviously, okay, if you are not committing, by default the committing will happen when the database will be closed, either when the session will be closed.
Suppose we are using the session1.save obj. After that, I'll apply the thread.sleep for 5000 milliseconds. Then,
okay,
and I go to the database and I'll check the data that it will be there.
Means without doing a commit, without doing the session close, okay, you want to check that in the database. Do you mean that? Without doing the session close? No, without doing
without using the commit. Without
doing
the commit only.
Yeah, without using commit, without using session1.close also. Because session1.close, when you will do automatically, it will give a pointer saying that please commit. Because if you are not doing in your explicit commit, then implicit commit also will happen.
Otherwise, I'll apply inside the thread.sleep. Then I just want to know after the save, and I'll hold the all things on the sleep.
Yes, I got your point. Okay, immediately it will not save unless an implicit commit or explicit commit will occur. Okay, immediately it will not save.
That is at that time in the Java objects only. After the commit, it will store inside the database.
Yes, but it is not mandatory that okay, the commit only the method we have to use. There can be implicit also commit. That is also the
close. That means which is
in JDBC also. Is it that okay? Every time we do commit in JDBC, do we do commit?
And not every time.
Every time, right? Okay. If you want explicit commit, we can do, but implicit commit also will happen, right or not? Same thing. Okay.
Okay.
All right then. Fine. So this is all the few points what we have been discussed so far. Okay, in the implementation about the Hibernate. However, I will just give this particular demo file okay with you, and you can easily create a Hibernate file by connecting to the Derby database. But however, you should have that okay Derby database okay. Running okay with then you can easily do that. No, that is what I just said. Like it will be saved okay, but until okay it has not been closed okay, until the implicit commit has not been occurred, till that the data which will be there in the session. But after that okay, it will be saved into the database only. But in that moment only, if somebody has rolled back or anything, then okay, the object will not be stored into the database. It happens with the JDBC also. Same concept. Okay then. Alright then, so these are all the few things what we have been implementing in the case of your how we have been implemented in your Hibernate. Just to tell you that okay, if I want to create an Hibernate, a new project, maybe Hibernate demo. So when you are creating, I just want to show you that Jsfhs Server 4.1. Let me go for this. See, when I'm implementing Hibernate 4.3.1, this is the framework which you are using, the version which you are using. Please see to this. Okay, this is the database connection which you are going to implement. JDBC :derby / localhost 1527 sample app on app. Okay, this is if you want to create a new connection, database connection. If you want to create, then you can create here, and you can connect to any particular databases also, if you remember. Okay, so this is not a new thing for us. Okay, this is the same thing which you can be also implemented because now I'm using the Derby database, so I may use the database connection called as Derby. But if I want to go for new connection also, you can use this JDBC ODBC bridge, or maybe you have Oracle thin driver, or maybe some other drivers, okay, which you want to use also. That can be also possible for you. Automatically Derby will display, because here the driver it will be there, no, in services. That's why the Derby is displayed. Whatever the driver, it will be there. Already the database connections in our services tab, that all the connections which will be displayed for you. In my case, okay, I have only a database that is Derby. You can see this. I just want to remove my video. You'll see this, okay, in the database connection what I have, only Derby. But other than that, okay, if I have created any other connection in the databases to Oracle or to maybe for a MySQL and all, then all that, okay, the details will be displayed over here. You need to install properly. I think you'll get Hibernate framework. Okay, which version of the Hibernate, which version of the NetBeans you are using? Is it Pavitra or Shivani? Alright, so this is Derby we can use, and then we can say finish. Then automatically you'll see there is an Hibernate configuration file which will be gets displayed for you, and then you can work on that. No, definitely it should display Hibernate framework. Please check. I think that the proper installation has not happened, or maybe here you can see that. Okay, Hibernate. We have Hibernate demo which I have created, and automatically there is an Hibernate configuration file which has been created for you. You could see that, okay, there is a driver class, URL, we have username, you have password, all that information which will be stored in the Hibernate configuration.xml file also. You could see that configuration file which we can find over here in this library also. Hibernate jar files are there. You could see that, okay, in the WebINF also. In this, okay, Hibernate configuration.xml file is also available. So this is, now you can write a simple POJO class you can create. Okay, there is for entity class means, okay, you can create a simple POJO class and we can implement. Alright, now you can create Java class, and this class you can create also. What? Employee class. You can create an employee class. Here you see project name, the class and all. Alright, okay, this particular class you need to create. So then employee, the name of the package I can give as a com. This is my employee class, and I can store all the properties and all, okay, within this getter methods, setter methods and everything. But remember, whatever the properties are there in the column, in the table, okay, the same you can be mentioned over here. Then once you have created this particular persistent class, okay, then what we need to do? We need to create a Hibernate configuration, that is mapping file. So for that, okay, you have to go to other, you have to go to Hibernate. Click on this persistent Hibernate, select the Hibernate, and then you can see that, okay, Hibernate mapping wizard you have to select. When you select that mapping wizard, you'll write the name, okay, that is employee.hdm. Okay, XML file it will be created. So whatever the class name, the same name you will give. Go for the next. You can see that, okay, automatically it will map. The class to be mapped, that is employee. Okay, you can give that, okay, employee. Give. Fine. Which database table you want to go for? Whether it is employee 1 or employee, okay, so whichever the class file you want to map, it can be mapped to you. See all the tables which will be displayed for you now. Alright, so you can select that employee 1, then you say finish. Automatically there will be an HBM file which will be created for you. But okay, other properties, which column, what property, okay, it has to be mapped, that you need to write it over here. Okay, you need to write that. Alright, and then okay, in your index.jsp file, okay, you can write the code, okay, whatever the code which we have discussed for saving the code. So see to here, okay, there is an file called as index.jsp. Here you can take the values and we can save that. Simple. That is what we need to implement. It did not create the employee 1 table. We did not create, means already created. It is already created. It is already there. That particular Derby table is already there in my database. I have created already. Without creating,
create is in our code. So otherwise we have to create.
Yes, we can do that. That is a different process. That is a different process.
We can create using the Hibernate.
But now what I'm saying is already a created table is there. Now I'm mapping and then we save that particular data.
Mapping the existing table.
Yes?
We are mapping the existing table.
The existing table, correct. Okay?
Okay.
Alright then. So that's a few things what we can do. Now I'll send this. Now you do it. Okay. If you create an employee table, you create an employee class and try to execute this particular program. I'll see this, send you this demo also. Okay. Perfectly executes, nothing will be having a problem. In the next class, we'll be discussing the other things, like we'll be talking about how we can map the properties. Not only that, we have a normal class, joining that, how we can do. These are all the things what we are going to discuss in the next class. Okay. Do you enjoy that, for today? Okay. With now I think the center is having some few things, which you want to enjoy now. And one more thing where you are going. Okay. For us, it is a lunch here. Vizag uplands. This will be a walkthrough. I just will open that 1 minute. Narendra's mail. I'm not. One minute. This is the timing. Okay, this is actually we have today 9 to 3, 3:30. But however, because of the Teachers' Day, we are going for 12:30 only. But however, Monday we'll have 11 to 3:30. Tuesday also we have 11 to 3:30. Okay, then we have Wednesday again 9 to 3:30 we have. Okay, then Thursday we have 11 to 3:30 again. Okay, like that the training it is. Is that clear for everyone? I think for everyone, is it clear? Only Wednesday we have 11 to 9 to 3:30. Apart from that, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday we have 11 to 3:30. In the next week. Okay. So please, accordingly, you can take your schedule so that it will be easy for you. Yes. Enjoy now with the teachers' party now. Let us will take that, Arun. All right then. Fine then. So we'll stop it over here. Thank you. Wish you the same. Okay then. Fine. To all of you, happy Teachers Day, and do enjoy with your things within your center. Okay. Now, please go through the demos which I will provide you for today, and tomorrow we have Sunday, so at least you please go through the demos and the part of your Hibernate also, so that we can come back and Monday we can discuss more in that. Thank you. Wish you the same. Thank you. Anyway, once again, happy Teachers Day. Again, we'll meet on Monday. Thank you. Have a nice day. Goodbye from my end.